And welcome back to another edition of the I Prefer the 80s and 90s Sports Podcast editorial over today's sports editorials, talk shows. It's a show basically where I tell you why I prefer the 80s and 90s over today. And today, when I mean 2020s, teens to the 20s, just basically I prefer the sports of the 80s and 90s to today. Today's topic is a broadcasting topic. For some reason, sports broadcasting today seems to be engulfed with trying to be Nostradamus. For those of you who don't know who Nostradamus is, supposedly he's the person who predicted the future. Whether he was right, I have no idea about the things he predicted, but he tries to predict the future. Every single day on sports television, somebody is trying to predict the future. Now, I don't mind it so much when you're trying to predict a team's wins, losses during that particular season. Everything is speculative. Obviously, you have to stay healthy. Obviously, you have to have some breaks come your way. Luck does factor into it. Tom Brady. But you have to get lucky sometimes. And sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. But what irritates me about the sports is we're in baseball season. Football season is about to begin. And they're already talking about predicting basketball, asking questions about basketball trades, basketball moves, basketball 24/7. I love basketball, but I don't need to know or hear about every single solitary day about things that we have no idea how they're going to work out. We have no clue about how teams are going to be. They spend so much time talking about the Lakers. They spend so much time talking about James Harden and all these players. By the way, the defending champions, the Denver Nuggets. We never hear anything about the Denver Nuggets. And football, they spend so much time talking about the Dallas Cowboys. The Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl. I don't need to hear about the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys haven't won a Super Bowl since 1995. The Lakers last won the championship when the league went into a bubble, and so that Anthony Davis couldn't get hurt. So they made sure he was in bed on time and stuff like that. I don't know. And the Lakers won. Since they've gotten out of the bubble, they haven't done anything. But that's neither here nor there. My point is, every single solitary day they're predicting 2024 stuff. It's still 2023. They're talking about kids coming to high school that are projecting for the class of 2025. They're talking about what's going to happen in free agency at the end of the season. What's going to happen in baseball at the end of the season in free agency. Shohei Ohtani, nobody knows what's going to go on with that. If he makes $500 million, which he shouldn't, he makes $500 million. But to every single solitary day to be bombarded with advertisements with coming up next on First Take, coming up next on NFL Live, coming up next on this show, coming up next on SportsCenter, we predict the 2030 Preakness, the NASCAR season. And you're just like, Can't the one season end? Can't one thing finish before you're talking about what's going to happen next year? Can't we see when Chris Paul was traded to Washington and then subsequently was traded to Golden State? And everyone automatically was like, okay, let's talk about the NBA's next year. Who's going to win the championship? Can't we see teams that just made moves play together first before we assess what's going to happen with trades that have happened, with free agency that has happened? Can't we see it first? Or do we have to be the first? Denzel Washington's famous quote recently, they asked him about the news. And I wish I remember exactly how he said it, but he basically was commenting on how news reporting isn't about accuracy, it's about being first. First to say something. I remember in 2009, 2010, might have been even 2011, John E. Miller going on national television saying, Tiger Woods is never going to win another golf tournament. Never going to win another major, excuse me. Wrote it in a book, apparently. And then Tiger Woods won a bunch of majors right after he made the statement. And then the new thing became, let's see who is going to be the first one to say Tiger Woods is going to win this week. He's going to win this week. And the announcer from CBS supposedly said it first, whose name escapes me. But that was the thing, to say things before it happened, to say things first. They criticize college football because they say they put out the preseason rankings and who's number 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they go, Georgia is number 1, but we haven't seen Georgia play yet this year. Georgia's starting a brand new quarterback this year. But every year, they predict who's going to be number 1 before the season starts, based off of who they got coming back and who they brought in. But then all the media gets on TV and says, no, you should not do this until October, until after these teams have played at least a month of football. Some of them are going to have hard games in there. And so, let's see. So which one is it? They already started predicting college basketball. I realize that Midnight Madness is in 2 months, in October, but they're already predicting college basketball. Already talking about what team is the team to beat. And I don't understand why. I don't understand why we are such in the prediction business and such in the business of not only being wrong, but making ridiculous proclamations about sight unseen. Why is the hype more important than the fact? This generation is consumed with that in the media. And then they quietly go away when they're wrong. Mel Kiper Jr. spends an entire year of his life evaluating college football talent, along with Todd McShay. And so NFL Network said, we got to find people who do that for a living too. So they went out, they got Mayock, they got Buddy Brooks, they got all these people to tell you who's going to get drafted, when, and where. And they are very infrequently wrong. because it's not an exact science. It's just water cooler conversation. And that's the thing that has increased over the last 43 years. Is the water cooler conversation turns into television shows about the future. ESPN a few days ago spent 3 days doing a fantasy football draft. Football season doesn't start until September 7th, I believe. But it's like ad nauseum, it's like the United States women's soccer team is favored to win the 2028 World Cup. How do you know? All these prognostications are foolish. Yet, every day, that's what we hear. And the funny thing about the college football thing, the preseason polls usually are right. But now people are like, no. Don't buy into the preseason poll because no one's played no one. But yet, Georgia's won the last 2 championships. Alabama's won a bunch of championships. The Big Ten and the SEC have been the best 2 conferences. Even though Oregon goes and beats Ohio State, right? A few years ago. And then last year, Oregon was like, all right, we beat Ohio State. Let's go and take on Georgia. And we're going to bring Bo Nix there to play because Bo Nix, he played at Auburn, so he's played against Georgia, so he could give us a little insight. 49-3 later, wasn't the right matchup. And they ain't getting no rematch either. I mean, respect to Oregon for going to take that whooping. But the bottom line is, sometimes the preseason polls aren't right. But this mass prediction, what really got me mad was they're predicting the NBA already. How are you predicting the NBA and you don't, and the summer's not even over yet? Teams haven't even started practicing together. Teams probably haven't even finished doing all of this off-season work in terms of building their teams. And I look back to the 80s and the 90s and I say, they never did this. Why did this start? They never talked about the future. At the end of the college basketball season, Dick Vitale and Digger Phelps in the 80s and 90s would sit there after the game was over and they would say, next year, the Dukies are going to be loaded. They're going to have this guy. They got Jay Williams coming. They got J.J. Redick. They got Carlos Boozer. They're going to be blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. That was it. But now, they do the same thing after the championship game. But now it's like, before we say that, we have to make sure that Abaji doesn't leave Kansas early. We got to make sure that Joel Embiid's coming back, so we don't do that much anymore. But the NBA, my goodness gracious, can't we have a preseason? Can't we see if Anthony Davis is going to be healthy with the Lakers? Kawhi Leonard, Paul George going to be healthy with the Clippers? Damian Lillard, is he going to be playing for Portland? Or is he going to be in Miami? No, they won't let us. And frankly, I'm absolutely tired of it. Because I don't need to hear it. It's okay to live in the present. I'm Richard Harris.